Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, some injury updates, a couple other pieces of news, and we've got trade rumors involving the Sabres, the Islanders, and the Devils. We'll touch on all these updates and trade rumors coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do it without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to tune for videos coming out in the very near future. Once again, if you haven't already, check out my community tabs on my YouTube channel. I'm starting to utilize that a little bit more. I'm trying to post at least every Sunday a schedule of what's to come throughout each and every week. So if you want a full view of the videos coming out each and every week on Sunday, check out my community tabs. You'll get a lot more information there. I also got a couple other things on the community tabs too that you guys can check out. Plus, also don't forget to stay tuned for my last video that took yesterday. What if the NHL had a script? It was a very interesting video. This is going to be a weekly thing, so I'd love for you guys to check it out. I think you guys will really like it. But in today's video, we got another news and rumor video here to discuss. So in today's video, we're going to start off as we usually do. We're talking about some signings. There were two signings from our past couple of days that I want to touch on here today. So first, in the Florida Panthers organization, pending UFA Jonah Gadjovich is in the final year of his deal. A 2-year deal, AV of league minimum, has been a pretty solid fourth liner over the past couple of seasons in the Florida Panthers organization. He's a left winger. He's 27 years old. He's been a pretty solid 12-13 forward. He has gotten a 2-year contract extension, AAV of $905,000 by the Florida Panthers. Not a bad pickup here for the Florida Panthers. So far in his first 4 games of the season, he's put up 1 assist for the Florida Panthers. Last year, he got into 42 games at the NHL level, his second highest game total at the NHL level, putting up 4 goals, which was his career high in goal scoring. So once again, it seems like with the injuries to Barkov and Kachuk, Gadjovich will most likely be like a regular this year instead of just like a spare type guy. So very interesting note there. But the Florida Panthers have sent one of their hard-hitting, bruising type forwards on the fourth line in Jonah Gadjovich to a 2-year deal. And like I said, $905,000 for a fourth liner, not a bad pickup there for the Florida Panthers. So very interesting note there. And then we saw a bigger extension, one that's going to start next year. Hutson, who's in the final year of a 3-year ELC. He's 21 years old. He can play on the left side. He can also play on the right side. He's a very versatile defenseman. Wound up getting a contract extension. We talked about, I think it was in a couple videos ago, about how Hutson and the Canadiens were getting emotional in the extension talk, so they had to sort of pause it for a little bit. Well, apparently they have come together and worked out the terms and the money for an extension. Hutson gets an 8-year extension, AAV of $8.85 million. This is a beautiful pickup here for the Montreal Canadiens. I think this is fantastic. Given the fact that Luke Hughes and Jackson Lacombe just got $9 million, the fact that they were able to keep Hutson under $9 million and didn't get like 10 or 11 is a very, very good piece of work from Kent Hughes. Last year, Hutson in his rookie season wound up having 6 goals and 66 points in 82 games with the Montreal Canadiens. So far this year, a little more of a slower start. Only has an assist in 3 games. Hasn't looked the best, but still a pretty solid top 4 defenseman. So all in all, this is a really solid pickup here for Montreal Canadiens as Hutson gets a long-term extension to remain in the Montreal Canadiens organization. But those are only 2 signings from our past couple of days. As Hutson signs an extension in the Montreal Canadiens organization, and Jonah Gadjovich signs a 2-year extension to also remain in the Florida Panthers organization. So very interesting note there. Next, we'll go over to a couple of injury updates. There were a slew of injury updates from over the weekend, so we'll try and touch on as many as we can here. So Dmitry Kulyakov was placed on an injury reserve with a wrist injury. It seems like he might miss a little bit more time than was originally expected, so he's probably going to be out for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month or 2, so it's a bad blow there for the Panthers blue line. James Van Riemsdyk was activated off of the non-roster and got back into game action for Detroit. He was on personal leave for a bit of training camp at the start of the season, so JVR is now back and he's gone to game action for Detroit. Big boost there for the Red Wings to get a solid bottom 6 forward back. Pyotr Kochetkov was placed on injury reserve and is out at least a week with a lower body injury, so it's a bad blow there for the Canes as Kochetkov's a really solid goalie. Mentioned Trocheck, who we talked about in our last video, left one of the recent games, is now going to be out week to week with upper body injuries, so it's a bad blow there for Trocheck. He's a really solid second line center, so hopefully he won't be out for an overly long period of time. Matthias Janmark will return later this week from his injury that's kept him out so far the first 2 games for the Edmonton Oilers, so don't know an exact date of when he's going to come back, but Mark will be back at some point later this week or potentially early next week. Sam Girard is also going to be out week to week with upper body injury. It's a bad blow there for the Avalanche. He's a really solid top 4 puck moving defenseman, so seeing him be out for any length of period of time is a bad blow there for Colorado. Brian Rouse was actually off of injury reserve and got back into game action from his lower body injury, so he had missed a little bit of training camp plus the first few games for the Pittsburgh Penguins with the lower body injury, so he got back into game action on Saturday, which is very good news there for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Jason Dickinson missed Saturday's game with upper body injury, so it's a bad blow there for the Blackhawks. Dickinson's a really solid second, third line center for the Chicago Blackhawks, so seeing him be out for any length of time, not overly good news there for the Hawks. Jonas Brodin returned on Saturday from his upper body injury. He'd been dealing with upper body injury dating back to last year. He had surgery to repair it in the offseason, so the fact that he's able to come back this early into the season is very positive news there for the Minnesota Wild. Hampus Lindholm was out day with undisclosed injuries, so it's a bad blow there for the Bruins. It's not as bad as some people could have thought it was when he left this game a couple of days ago, but still, it's not overly great news there. But Lindholm's going to be out for the next little bit. Evgeny Dadonov is out with a hand fracture and will be out at least a few weeks and has been placed on injury reserve, so it's a bad blow there for the Devils' bottom 6, as Dadonov is currently injured. Hayden Fleury left Saturday's game with a lower body injury and didn't return, so it's a bad blow there for the Jets, as Fleury can miss a couple of games with his injury. Chris Letang left Saturday's game with a lower body injury and is out day. While Carson Soucy left that same game on Saturday with upper body injury and didn't return and has now been placed on injured reserve. So Soucy's a really solid third, second pair of defensemen, so see him be out with injuries. Not great news there for the Rangers. Well, Chris Letang left Saturday's game with a lower body injury and is out day, so hopefully he'll only miss maybe like a game or two and won't be out for an overly long period of time. Tyler Cleveland returned to game action on Monday after dealing with undisclosed injuries, so it's really good news there for the Sens to get their third pair of defensemen back. Callum Murchie in NYI and Jordan Dumais in Columbus were both active for season opening injury reserve and were back to reassigned to the minors. So they were both started season on season opening injury reserve because of injuries, and they were assigned to the minors to start the season. So maybe they get called back up. We'll have to wait and see, but good to see both those guys are at least healthy. Josh Norris is going to miss 8 weeks with an upper body injury. The guy can't catch a break. Like, I feel so bad for Josh Norris after all those injury-riddled seasons in Ottawa and even his first little bit of Buffalo last year after the trade deadline trade. He's injured again. Like, things are just not going overly well for Buffalo injury-wise this year, and Josh Norris is back on injury reserve, which is bad blow there for Buffalo. Mackenzie Blackwood was assigned on a conditioning stint by the Colorado Avalanche. So he's going to play a couple of AHL games to see if he's going to get back and be ready to get back into NHL action. So we shall see how his conditioning stint goes, but he's going to the AHL on a conditioning stint. The Utah Mammoth announced that Sean Durzi will be out at least 4 weeks with upper body injury. It's a bad blow once again for the Utah Mammoth. Durzi missed a whole bunch of time last year due to injuries early on in the year, so with Durzi being out due to injuries, it's going to be an awful blow for the Mammoth, and hopefully some of the other defensemen step up. Zach McEwen will be out an extended period of time with undisclosed injury he sustained in Saturday's game. It's a bad blow there for the Devils, as McEwen's going to be out for next little bit. Jacob Slavin is questionable for the upcoming road trip with a lower body injury, so not great news there. Slavin's a huge piece of the Carolina Hurricanes blue line, so hopefully he won't miss too much time. Tkachuk left Monday's game with an upper body injury. Lucas Raymond left Monday's game with upper body injury, and Cole Koepke left Monday's game with a lower body injury. So Tkachuk and Raymond are much more important than Koepke at this point in time. If Tkachuk is out for any length of period of time, that's going to be a massive blow to Ottawa. Same thing with Raymond and Detroit. Those are two of their best forwards, so see those two be out for any length of period of time will be bad blows for both the Thunders and the Red Wings. Koepke being out is not overly great, but the Jets do have pieces that they can place, and hopefully Koepke won't be out for an overly long period of time. Pierre-Luc Dubois left Sunday's game with undisclosed injuries, so not overly great news there for the Capitals. Hopefully he won't be out for an overly long period of time. And Miles Wood left yesterday's game with an upper body injury. So lots of players who have just been announced injured, some of them longer term, so hopefully none of them are going to be out for a significant period of time, but hopefully most of those guys get better. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to some reassignments and some recalls and then some waiver updates. So players who are reassigned back to the AHL over the past 3 days were Veli Koivunen in Pittsburgh, Brad Lambert in Winnipeg, and Dennis Gilbert in Philadelphia, while Kel Clegg in Winnipeg, Jack Akan in Colorado, Brian Hallinan in New Jersey, Emil Andrea in Philly, Tobias Bjornfoot in Florida, and Charles Alexis Legau in Carolina have all been called up. So very interesting note there. Like for Lambert and Gilbert, they just swapped with Clegg and Andrea. Koivunen was sent back down because of the rust injury, while Akan's probably being called up because of the Gerard injury. Halonen's being called up because of the Dadonov injury. Bjornfoot's being called up because of the Kulikov injury, and Alexis Legau is being called up just, I guess, because of some added insurance. So very interesting note there, but those are some really interesting recalls and assignments from the last couple of days. Going over to waiver updates, only a couple of waiver updates back over on Sunday. We saw Jack Thompson in San Jose as well as Lucas Carlsson in San Jose both be placed on waivers. There's a lot of people who thought Thompson could be claimed because he's a really solid young defenseman who is a really solid guy who has the potential, I think, at the NHL level to be a solid third pair defenseman. Lucas Carlsson at this point in time is more of like an AHL level guy, potential call-up option. So I thought there might have been a team or two out there who needs some defensive help who could have taken a shot on Jack Thompson, but no one did. He wound up clearing. Both of them actually did. So both those guys are going to be assigned to the AHL for the Sharks, and we'll see if they'd be able to call up in the next little bit. But very interesting note there that Thompson and Carlsson both cleared waivers. So very interesting note there. A couple of other smaller things. Ian Cole in Utah and Tyler Myers in Vancouver are both fine for stuff that they did in the Saturday's game action. So very interesting note there. I think there were only like $2,500 fines, but still very interesting note there that both those guys got fined for incidents that happened on Saturday. Cole with Stamkos and Myers with, I think, McDavid. Also, guys who signed PTOs in the AHL, Brett Liaison, who signed a PTO with the Panthers AHL affiliates, and Brendan Smith, who signed a PTO in the Jackets AHL affiliates, have both signed new PTOs in the AHL. So very interesting note there. We shall see what comes of it, but very interesting note there that both Liaison and Smith have signed AHL PTOs. And lastly, the Edmonton Oilers are currently talking extension with Brett Kulak. So we shall wait and see what happens there. We know the Oilers have recently just signed a slew of players, including McDavid, Wallman, and Ekholm. Maybe Kulak is next. We shall wait and see on that. But very interesting note there that after signing Wallman and Ekholm, this team is still having contract negotiations with Brett Kulak. So we shall wait and see what comes of it, but very interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we got a couple of trade rumors here to talk about, 3 in total. First, when it comes to Anthony Tredeau, he was talking on the Daily Faceoff Rundown. I think they were discussing some potential trade candidates that we could see later on into the season. Tredeau thinks that a guy who could wind up being dealt is Dougie Hamilton. And he says that the Devils at some point are going to have to clear up cap space. They signed Luke Hughes. For the time being, they can run with their roster, but once Jonathan Kovacevic, who's on injury reserve right now, gets back, they're going to need some space to activate him. So he says that Dougie Hamilton seems to be a prime trade target, not only to just free up cap space to activate Kovacevic, but also to try and add some sort of an impact top 6 forward. He says that a lot of teams could definitely use a top 4 right shot puck moving defenseman, and the Devils might be one of the only teams in the NHL who have a right shot puck moving defenseman who are open to moving him. So once again, I'm not sure if this is a trade that actually has happened, but we've been hearing Dougie Hamilton's name more and more ever since the Luke Hughes signing. It seems like the Devils really have enough defensemen at this point in time. On top of having guys in longer term deals like Pesci and Siegenthaler, they have younger guys like Luke Hughes, Simon Nemec, and Seamus Casey. I mean, like, that's already 5 of your top 6 defensemen going forward, and you could easily get some other guys, and you still have Dylan and Kovacevic. So with all of that in mind, like, it seems like Dougie Hamilton's starting to more and more become a sort of like expendable piece. And I think he signed $9 million for this year plus either 1 or 2 more seasons afterwards. So he's got a tiny bit of term. So I'm not sure if the Devils will be willing to retain a little bit of money, but I mean, if they could bump his cap it down to like a $7 million AAV, I think there would be some teams out there who would be willing to offer maybe something like a similar package to Alex S. Jones, or maybe even a little bit better, where it's like a first round pick and a really solid player, which one would be Spencer Knight. I could see something similar like that happen for New Jersey. Now, like I said, I'm not sure where he could go. A team that comes to mind that could really use a top 4 defenseman right now would be a team like Winnipeg. Like, that would be a very interesting one. Maybe there's a couple other teams. Dallas, Vegas have been linked to guys like Rasmus Anderson. Could they be linked to a guy like Dougie Hamilton? Is a possibility. Like I said, I'm not sure if at a $9 million cap hit there'd be too many takers, but I know a lot of teams could really use a top 4 right shot defenseman, so it might make some sense as to why it's a possibility. So I'll have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Dougie Hamilton, as Tredeau, at least on the Daily Faceoff, does think that there's a very likely possibility you could see Dougie Hamilton trade later on into the season, so we should wait and see on that. Next, going over to an article, I saw once again no linkage to NHL Insiders or anything, but I did see a recent article saying that 2 players that the New York Islanders could look to move if their season goes off the rails, especially early, is Jean-Gabriel Pageau and Anders Lee, and I completely agree with this. Now, the Islanders have not had the greatest starts to the season. Well, Matthew Schaefer, their first overall pick, has looked phenomenal for the New York Islanders. The entire team has not been able to get wins. They're currently, at the recording of this video, 0-3-0 with a loss to the Winnipeg Jets, the Washington Capitals, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So they haven't had a great start to the season. Even though they've been scoring a little bit more than usual, they've been giving up a ton of goals, even if Schaefer has looked all right. So with that in mind, if they start to get to like where they're at the 10-game mark and they're like 4 or 5 games below 500 and they're not looking overly good, I could definitely see early on them try and make a couple of moves. And Pageau and Lee make a ton of sense. Both are in the final year of their deals. Pageau's making $5 million, Lee's making $7 million. I think they would have to retain a bunch on Lee to make him a sort of very likely trade candidate, but at $3.5 million, if they were to retain 50%, I think there would be teams out there who could use Lee as like a solid third-line goal scorer, which is something that I think he could be really good at. Pageau at this point in time is more of like a second, third-line center, so like teams who need second-line center help, like Montreal, like Carolina, like Vancouver, like a couple of other teams, I think could really benefit from adding Jonah Gadjovich, even if second line center is a little bit out of his comfort level, and I think he's more suited to be a third line center. So we should wait and see on that. But Pageau and Lee, if the Islanders don't have a really good start to the season, which so far they haven't, and it keeps on going on for the next couple of weeks, month or two, I think Pageau and Lee are going to become more and more very likely trade candidates for the New York Islanders. And I think Pageau, with the way he played last year, and Lee being a former 30-goal scorer, they could bring in pretty solid returns there too. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on the New York Islanders if they keep on having a slow start to the season. And lastly, going over to the Buffalo Sabres. Elliotte Friedman was recently talking about them on his recent 32 Thoughts podcast, and he says that this could be a very big week for the Buffalo Sabres. He says that big guys of the organization, like Thompson and Carlsso, have already known that this year has to be different for the Buffalo Sabres. And they have so far started just like the Islanders, 0-3-0 with losses to the Avalanche, the Bruins, and the Rangers, having a combined 2 goals in 9 periods of hockey. It has not been good for Buffalo Sabres fans. There was, I think, a jersey thrown on the ice at yesterday's game against the Colorado Avalanche. Like, things are not going overly well for the Buffalo Sabres. And as we talked about before, and potentially later on this week, bad starts do not indicate teams making the playoffs. Like, there's a very likely indication that if you have a bad start, you are not going to be a team who makes the playoffs. So, like, Buffalo really needs to get their act together and win a couple of games this week. I think they have a game against Ottawa and Florida later on this week, so it doesn't get any easier. Buffalo is in a really tight predicament. And if they start out terribly and they are at like the 20-25 game mark, closer to like Christmas and things like that, and they're not looking overly well, do we see a fire sale of Buffalo again? Like, is Buffalo going to go through another rebuild? Is that a possibility? Like, guys who have been mentioned recently, Alex Tuch, I think Jeff Merrick or Jay Pagnotta or someone like that mentioned recently that Alex Tuch, by the view of Thanksgiving, if they're not doing overly well, very likely could try and want out of Buffalo. And that team like Edmonton is sniffing around Alex Tuch. A team, in my opinion, who could really use a guy like Alex Tuch would be a guy like Vegas. Return of Alex Tuch, adding him to the top 6, top 9 that Vegas already has. If they can make that work cap-wise, why the heck not? So we'll have to wait and see on that. And there's been some talk that if this thing goes sour very fast, could star-level players like Dahlin, like Power, like Thompson, all these sort of like 25 to 30-year-old type players who have been with the Buffalo Sabres for a couple of years now, would they want out? Like, would Dahlin want out? Would Tage Thompson want out? Would Owen Power want out? Like, teams who could use top 4 defense, and imagine if Rasmus Dahlin came on the market. Like, teams who could use first line centers, like a Minnesota Wild or potentially even a Vancouver Canucks. Imagine them adding a guy like Tage Thompson. Like, there would be a ton of teams interested in Buffalo Sabres players if Buffalo goes, once again, through the selling route. I don't know what's wrong with Buffalo. Starting 0-3-0 again is absolutely awful. I feel really bad for dedicated Buffalo Sabres fans. Like, the Sabres are one of my 4 favorite teams, but I have Ottawa and Vegas as my top 2 favorite teams. So Buffalo's a little bit more of a back burner favorite team. But for teams who have Buffalo as their favorite team, like, I feel so bad for them, because it looks like at this point in time they're gonna miss the playoffs again, which would be an awful blow for the Buffalo Sabres fan base. And maybe there's another possibility we could see multiple moves from Buffalo once again, selling off pieces at this year's trade deadline. So we should wait and see on that. But definitely, let me know your thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. Is Buffalo close to selling off a ton of players yet again? Do you think the Islanders could move Lee and Pageau if their season doesn't go overly well to start the year? And do you think Hamilton gets moved by New Jersey? Definitely your thoughts on all of that, plus all the news updates and the signings from our past couple of days. That's all we're for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're listening, subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this for all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. Also, a blog about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I'll link to that in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.